I can't believe I've never committed a crime. Welcome in to DNVR Avalanche's At the Rink podcast, hosted by Meghan Angley and Jesse Montano. Meghan Angley, off IR. I'm finally back in studio to do this podcast again, and I'm really excited to be quite literally back at the rink.
Yeah.
I know you always ask me how I don't get cold in the rinks, but my skin has longed for the cool air on my skin again, and I've really missed it. So I'm excited to get into some stuff with you today.
Yeah.
It feels good to do this podcast on the heels of the Avs finally getting in the win column again, and I'm sure that's going to be a little bit of what we talk about, but knocking out some of the around the league stuff. I think World Juniors, the conclusion of that tournament, really put, I don't even know if it's possible to put a brighter spotlight on Connor Bedard, but even immediately going back to his junior team after winning a gold medal for Team Canada, he has a 4-goal game, 2 assists. He's absolutely unreal. It's a little bit scary to think about what he's going to do in the league, but how did you feel about the tournament? Did you watch the gold medal game and the heartbreaking bronze medal game?
Yeah. No, Megan, it's great to be back here. We had you in the red non-contact last week. We went remote. So it's great to be back here. We got Ya here in the building. So no, it's nice to be back. It's nice to see you. Yeah, we'll get you back to the rink here tomorrow morning. Get you in that nice cold Zamboni tunnel.
I'm wearing shorts.
I'm
so sorry.
Yeah, shorts and a tank top similar to no sleeves, just no sleeve life for Megan. I was lucky. I got the game story on our little 3-man rotation for the one night the Avs win. So it's been a nice couple nights for me. But yes, Megan, the World Juniors. I guess let's start with the bronze medal game. Good to see Sean Behrens get some hardware, right? What?
No, I agree. I think he was a bright spot in the tournament too for Team USA defensively.
Sorry, I said that and you had this shocked look on your face. No. I was like, wait a minute,
even when I wrote the quote graphic request, put gold. Like, can we get a graphic for his gold medal? Because in my eyes, it was a gold medal.
The bronze medal game is always such a weird. It's always such a weird game to watch because, you won. You won the game. You got third, and so it's just always this. It's. I remember playing in a couple growing up where it's I guess this is all right. It's cool we did win this last game, but
is this the tournament where
I
think it was a bronze medal game where a player threw the medal into the stands?
No. I'm sorry. That was who was it from Sweden? It was a silver medal.
Silver. Okay.
Yeah, it was a silver medal. Man, who do they play for now? Yeah, I don't know. That was not a great look, but I'm almost positive it was a silver medal. They lost a gold medal game, and I'm pretty sure they tossed it into the crowd.
It's a reflection, too, of how young these players are. Right. Because I didn't even chastise that player at the time. It's a really emotional moment, and you'd like them to meet that moment a little bit better, but I kind of understood some of that disappointment, too. You'd prefer them not to throw the medal into the stands.
Hyper competitive, to your point, young kids. And again, not to, wow, I can't believe I've done this twice. But I remember being in tournaments growing up where, you lose in the championship game. It was a really good tournament, national tournament, whatever. And you're sitting in the locker room pissed that you lost. And it truly isn't till later that you can appreciate, we played well and whatever. And I remember thinking that at the time, same thing where it's I don't necessarily blame the kid, but that is something he's going to wish he could take back in 5 years, and I think they did get the medal back for that kid. I'm gonna have to look up who it was because I know he's a relatively prominent name. Anyways, nice for Sean Behrens to get a medal, get some hardware, especially after everything that happened with him relative to this tournament a year ago, whether it be COVID, injuries. That was a weird tournament last time, just in general. Really, it happened 1.5 times. So it was nice to see him kind of persevere through all of that, end up playing a significant role for the U.S. Tough game against Canada for them. So again, in the same light of what we were just talking about with the silver medal, I think that bronze will feel a lot better in 2-3 years once Sean Behrens is in the NHL or at least, pro hockey. And he's kind of on to the next phase of his career. I think he'll be able to appreciate that bronze medal a little bit more. And to kind of use it as a natural segue into the second part of your question.
Real quick, it was Elias Anderson.
Oh, Elias, thank you. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So Yahir coming through clutch
Hell
already.
yeah.
Elias Anderson was the player for Sweden, and it was silver. It was a silver medal.
Correct. Against Canada, they lost 3-1.
3-1 to Canada. They lose the gold medal game, and he tosses the silver medal. Elias Anderson, like, that's not a bad player.
No.
That's not an insignificant player.
Hopefully it was a teaching moment.
Right. Yeah. That's got to be, right? Like, that's just got to be one of those moments where, like I said, you look back on it, and it's like, wow, how dumb. That was you got silver in the most prestigious under-20 tournament in the world.
Right.
That's a big deal. Yeah. Hopefully a teaching moment. But, as it was for Elias Anderson, same for Sean Behrens. You lose to a loaded Canadian team. Nothing to be ashamed of, really. Well, that U.S. game, there was some more controversy that I don't know about, you'd be down on, but I can definitely see why that one would upset you. But Connor Bedard, look, I think we went through a run in the NHL where you had elite, borderline generational talents coming out of the draft, like 4 out of 5 years there, like in the early 2010s. It just went kind of crazy, right? You had McKinnon, you had McDavid, you had Eichel in the same draft. That 2010 draft just in general produced so many high-end elite NHL players that, I think people just kind of got caught up in every year the number one pick is a can't miss prospect. And we've seen in years since Connor McDavid that, yes, you can. Austin Matthews is another one to throw into that, just that run of players that we had. But you can have players that are drafted really high that are very good players, but they're not necessarily in that tier of Connor McDavid, Nathan McKinnon, Austin Matthews, et cetera, et cetera. So I get annoyed because I feel like people throw around the phrase generational talent a lot. And I think that term has lost a little bit of what it actually means. It means, like, no, a player with this skill set will play, like, there'll be one of these guys every 20 years. And again, I think you got Connor McDavid, who I think is that generational talent. And then you have guys like Nathan McKinnon and Austin Matthews, who are really, really, really high-end elite players. Connor Bedard fits into the Connor McDavid conversation, right? It's been almost 10 years since Connor McDavid was drafted, which is crazy. And now you have Connor Bedard coming, who might be better.
Offensively, it's really possible just looking at his pace. I mean, it's really comparable to McDavid's, but interestingly, too, McDavid hit a milestone in this last week. He earned his 500 is definitely a word. 500. 500 career assists. He's among the fastest to do it, but he's not number one. Of course, that's going to be Wayne Gretzky. Right. He's still in career totals is by and far the leader. Mm-hmm. But McDavid etching that into hockey history, the same moment Connor Bedard is winning a gold medal and points leader, goal scorer in the tournament, and scoring at important moments too, opening the scoring in the gold medal game, scoring the OT winner to send them to the finals.
Yep. Which was a bananas goal by itself.
Finally went back and watched it after you told me about
it. Really? Yeah,
yes.
It was just crazy. And like, that's the part to me where, like, look, Connor McDavid did some unbelievable things at the junior level. And I don't know, maybe this will get some people to tell me what an idiot I am, but, like, I just feel like I'm watching Bedard, and the stuff that he's doing is just on another level. Again, when you're talking about relative to their age and how they looked versus the competition, as dominant as Connor McDavid was, like, Bedard just looks like a step ahead. I think McDavid still has the speed. The speed is something that I remember thinking, like, I've never seen anything like this at the junior level. But Bedard just has that thing. The puck just sticks to him. Like, nobody can take it off of him. Again, the overtime winner, again, just like, it seems like he can't get away from the puck. He's got that, like, magnetic field where the puck just finds him. And then he has that elite skill. And I'm trying to pull it up kind of quickly on the fly here. we've seen underage kids go to WJCs before, really elite underage players go to the World Juniors and play well. Wow, they really fit in well for being an underager. Connor Bedard has 2 more WJC cycles of eligibility. That is how young he is. He could play in this tournament in 2024 and 2025. He won't, because he'll be in NHL All-Star by that time.
Right.
But that's how young he is. And again, I'm just trying to... So Connor McDavid's WJCs as an underager, 7 games, a goal, and 3 assists. It's nothing to shake your head at for an underager at the WJCs. And I don't have Bedard's numbers.
It's 23 points total.
It's in the 20s.
And the only player in the tournament behind him is Logan Cooley, and it's maybe about half that. He separated from his peers despite being 17 years old.
23 points, great job. 9 goals, 14 assists.
Well above what the others were capable of. And Logan Cooley played great in the tournament.
Right.
For him to be behind Bedard in the points, it's incredible.
And again, it's the level of competition. An underage kid, you see it all the time, even with these really high-end first overall picks, they get in the league, the NHL, and it's just a step faster. It's just a little bit bigger. It's a little bit more physical. Well, it's the same thing with the World Juniors. Connor Bedard goes from, playing with the Regina Pats to playing against a bunch of kids that do play regularly pro in Europe. It is a step faster. The whole age group is just leveled up a bit. And not only did he not miss a beat, to your point, he dominated and stood out on a team with 18 first-round picks. 18 first-round NHL picks. And to your point, Connor Bedard, I believe, doubled up or close to doubled up the next closest point producer on Team Canada. He's on another level. This is one of those guys that, barring health, it seems like as close to a can't miss prospect that we've seen since McDavid. And before that, probably you have to go back to Crosby, Ovechkin to find another guy that you feel this confident about coming to the league and not just being an impact player, but having a big time impact on the league as a whole.
Looking at the tournament too for Sean Behrens and the trade deadline, does winning a bronze medal and his pretty stellar play defensively in the tournament increase his value as an asset?
I'm sorry, Meghan, but yes.
No, I agree. And it's interesting because we've talked about the reasons why the Avs would not seek to move one of their lone defensive prospects, but he sure did become a lot more valuable on an international stage. It draws a lot of attention more than just the NCAA can. And he goes back to his college team and also has a 2-assist night as a defenseman.
Wore a letter with US as well?
He was the alternate captain.
So look, and again, normally I wouldn't put too much stock into this, but we've now watched this Avalanche team build a Stanley Cup champion around this type of stuff. High character, leadership type guy, does things the right way. I don't doubt for one second that other teams around the league aren't also looking at these types of guys and saying, hey, the Avalanche prioritize speed, skill, and leadership. It's a copycat league. Everyone's going to be doing that. You have a skilled defenseman here who can skate well, and is a leader on his NCAA team. Went to the WJCs, was a leader for Team USA, and then to your point, had a great tournament. Goes back to his college team, immediately jumps right back into action, doesn't miss a beat. I don't doubt for one second that the Avs' most highly rated prospect became even more highly rated in the eyes of the other 31 NHL teams. I think the 2023 first is in play. I think they will try their hardest not to. But if it comes down to landing, and I'm going to pull a name out of a hat here, Jonathan Toews, if it's Sean Behrens or you don't get the deal done, I have a feeling C-Mac and Joe Sakic may be willing to part with him if they think it gets them this much closer to another Stanley Cup championship this year.
It's a difficult pill to swallow. some other frustration I had from the tournament into the summer and then this tournament now is the utilization Team USA started Behrens off with. They had him pegged as a bottom pairing guy in the summer
hit myself in the
and
face
to
with my own
start
microphone.
this
Sorry.
tournament this time around. And I remember reaching out to somebody who was covering it in the summer, like, is he injured? Why is he being utilized so sparingly? And they had an explanation that I think was a bit mansplaining because I think that people underestimate Behrens up front because of his size.
Yeah.
But I like that he proved that he was a top pairing guy by the end of this tournament. I would have at least had him on the second pair minimum to start. But it's interesting that among his peers, there is actually a moment that he had to prove himself each in the summer and now again here in this winter tournament.
So, Megan, do you remember, let's go back a couple of years to the WJCs where Cale Makar and Connor Timmins played together on Team USA. Team Canada. Connor Timmins was given a lot of responsibility early in that tournament. Top 4 minutes, eventually working his way into that top pairing, was really relied upon heavily. Cale Makar was actually a healthy scratch for multiple games and was really early on used almost exclusively as a PK or as a power play specialist. Yet, by the end of the tournament, was named the top defenseman in the tournament for Canada, and I believe shared the team lead in either points or goals. I don't remember which one. And it was just so funny. It's so funny to watch. I feel like you see a lot of conventional hockey wisdom, using the word wisdom loosely here, prevalent at these World Junior tournaments because you have a lot of coaches who are plucked from junior teams or development programs, things like that. And they're put in these situations where it's like, hey, here's a group of kids, form them into a team and go win a tournament all within the next month.
Right.
And I just feel like you see a lot of these coaches kind of just fall back on the cliche. Well, undersized, offensive puck-moving guy, we'll use him sparingly. We need big bodies. We need guys who can, bang along the boards and get to the front. And it's like, take a second. Take 2 days and evaluate what you got here. Cale Makar was the best defenseman on that team, Hockey Canada team by a mile. By a mile. And Connor Timmins, again, he was used adequately, but he's got better size
right.
and he has more easy to identify tools. But like that should have been your top pairing from game one on, and it ended up taking them up until like the last game of the tournament to figure out, hey, we can use Cale Makar more than when we have a man advantage, and he ends up being the best defenseman in the tournament. I feel like it's something similar on the USA side with a guy like Shawn Behrens. This is a guy who offers so much more than being a speedy, puck-moving, small defenseman, and you're happy for him that he was able to use that tournament in the summer, use the start of his NCAA season, and then this tournament to show, hey, not only Team USA, but hey, Colorado Avalanche, hey, NHL, I'm not just an undersized defenseman who can use my legs. I'm a legitimate defender who can have an impact at a high level on all 200 feet of the ice.
And to give allowances for the summer tournament, because of his age, he was going to get another crack at it. There were guys in that D-corps who weren't. And so I understand priority a little bit there. But the winter tournament, Shawn Behrens did what he had to do to prove that he is sound defensively. And he was a bright spot in we don't have to get into the Luke Hughes conversation, but and we'll wrap up WJCs too. But how nice is it to see Connor Timmins finally get his first NHL goal?
Oh, I was so happy for him last night, and actually watching that, I'm
Arizona. What'd you do?
I just don't. We're gonna have to talk to our PHNX folks. I just, unless there's something there going on behind the scenes that we just don't know about.
True.
I know his family's from Ontario. I think it was Elliot Friedman was talking about, I guess his dad goes to every game that he's in.
That's adorable.
Whether it be American League, or I don't know about every last game, but his dad is at the vast majority of games.
Yeah.
American League, NHL, wherever he's playing, that's where his dad goes. So I think I'm given to believe there was a little bit of something going on behind the scenes where it just made a little bit more sense for him to go back there with the injuries, stuff like that, be a little bit closer to family. Craig was telling us it sounds like maybe they wanted some reps for him in the American League in Arizona. Toronto said, hey, we're depleted on D. We'll give him a look. I think, and I texted my buddy this, the night he had that 3-assist night, Connor Timmins seriously may end up being the linchpin. I'm not necessarily saying this year, but that finally gets that Toronto team out of the first round. They've been missing a really high impact defenseman. Connor Timmins has a ways to go before he's there. I have seen that potential in him since day one. I think he's gotten to Toronto. He's getting ice, and he's just running with it. He's making use of every second he's getting. I couldn't be happier for him. That is a dude that I thought was a steal in the second round for the Avs. He almost made the team out of camp his first year as a second-round pick. If not for the injury problems, I think he's got his name on the cup right now, and we are looking at a future top pairing of Cale Makar, Connor Timmins, and then you've got Devon Taves, Bowen Byram, like down lineup. I think that is the potential that a guy like Connor Timmins has. Could not be happier for him to finally break through and get his first NHL goal last night.
And it was great to see him back in Colorado for that horrific New Year's Eve Toronto game, which is just a starting point of a really downward spiral for the Avs there for a bit. You thought that was rock bottom, and then the Vancouver game happened. And so I'm going to throw this to you to start talking about how the Avs have been able to come out of that and the role certain players specifically have played in stepping up in big moments and helping to at least alleviate some of the losses that they've been taking on here.
So, I don't know. I'm an interesting person to ask about the losing streak because, Meghan, Jared Bednar said a couple weeks ago, you're eventually you are what you repeatedly do. And that was meant, he said it kind of cautionary, like, hey, we can't keep saying we're going to get out of it because eventually, if you're not getting out of a rut, it's not a rut. That's who you are. And so that was how he meant it. But like, I really kind of take a step back and I just look at that a little bit of a different way. Under this Jared Bednar coaching regime and with this core intact for the last 5 years, I don't know, Meghan, I think I have a pretty good idea of who this Avalanche team is. And even this season, despite the injuries, I think they've done a pretty good job on the whole, not recently, but of sticking to their identity. And again, being comfortable with who they are. And I think that is what great teams, championship teams, do better than anyone. We talked so much last year in that cup final and even leading up to it. One of the reasons why Tampa Bay was a team that scared me a little bit, if you're the Avs, it's because that's a team who knows who they are and you're not going to rattle them. You're not going to, come out. The Avs hung 7 on them in game 2, 7-0 shutout. There was not an ounce of panic in that Tampa Bay team because they said, it happens. You lose big games. It's a shame it happened right now. But we're comfortable with who we are and what we know how to do. And that's something that I feel like I've seen develop on this Avalanche team over the last few years is being confident in who they are and knowing what they're going to do. So I look at this recent skid as exactly that. It's a skid. This is a team that is comfortable in their own skin. They've hit a little bit of a rough patch. The injuries and the fatigue, I think, caught up with them a bit. And they went through a bad slide. The Vancouver game was a really bad outing, and that was the first time where I think you saw that frustration kind of boil over, where it was like a questioning, are we able to get out of this? And then they come out in that Edmonton game, and I thought they played fantastic, true to their identity, calm, cool, collected. They outplayed the Oilers. They got some crummy luck going against them, and it never shook them. And I think that's a testament to the leadership, the guys in the room, and this team, despite being so depleted, despite going through 5 games, like you said, has had a few guys that they've been able to lean on. Nathan MacKinnon was absolutely one in that Edmonton game. But the one that I wanted to talk about is JT Compher. We talked about him a little bit on the regular DNVR Avalanche podcast. But he's in a contract year, so it's easy to point to that. But from my view, there has been a clear consistency difference in what I see out of JT Compher this year versus what we've seen in the past. He's had these tendencies to kind of disappear. He's not producing at this insanely high rate, but I feel like he's been an impact player on most nights, playing legitimate top 6 minutes. Do you see that same thing from JT?
Absolutely. It's similar to the conversation surrounding Mikko Rantanen because to a larger degree, Mikko Rantanen has been accused of also disappearing in stretches, but he absolutely turns it on in a noticeable way. And when he does, it's hard to deny that he is one of the best wingers in the league right now.
Yeah.
JT Compher, though, he's held to a different standard because of what he represents. He is kind of a player you can move throughout parts of the lineup. When he has been given increased opportunity, like at a 2C position, it hasn't always gone super well for him. And like you said, he disappears for stretches at times. And so the part about him that has endeared himself to the fan base has been opportunistic and timely goals when the team needs them most. He has been known for that. However, he's found ways to score even outside of just the timely moments, though some would say scoring in a stretch of games where the Avs are struggling to score 5v5, even on the power play, JT Compher scoring throughout parts of that is pretty timely. Yeah. And so the consistency has definitely been there a lot more than this season than from what we've seen of him in the past. And it's interesting. In the past, people have been really quick to part with him in trade talks. Like, he's just a movable asset in a lot of people's eyes. But I think people are finally appreciating the value of JT Compher, the flexibility that he brings, and him personally being able to step into that side of the game that can assume a little bit more responsibility is really going to make whatever happens in the offseason difficult.
Is this the best you've seen JT Compher play for an extended period of time since you've been here?
He's played some good hockey over the years for us. I would say probably his best start half a season, opening the season to Christmas time. Consistent work and production and being responsible defensively, adding the faceoffs, power play, penalty kill. It's probably his best first third of the season that he's had since he's been here with us.
He seems to have a knack for coming up in kind of big moments, scoring some big goals, tying games, taking leads late, playoffs. Do you think that certain players kind of have that, clutch factor, or whatever you want to call it? Like, do you think that's a real thing? Or?
Yeah, I believe it's a real thing. I think part of it is he's another guy that's really good. Look at where all those goals are getting scored from. They're generally not from distance. I think he does a nice job when we're playing with the puck away from the net. He does a nice job and has a good awareness to get down to the net, create screens, tips, traffic, come up with rebounds. He's on in a lot of key situations, power play, 6 versus 5, and he has a knack a little bit like Landy, getting down there and getting a stick on pucks. So doesn't surprise me that he comes up with a few of those goals.
The consistency is the part that I think is so interesting because I think you just said it great, honestly. Like, the goals that he's scoring now are timely. They're maybe not in that same, like, kind of clutch moment that we've just seen so many JT Compher goals come from this Avalanche team over the years where, he's you haven't heard him for 2 weeks. You haven't heard his name. And then with a minute left, they're down one, and he scores from right in front of the net. But it's interesting because I think you're right, Meghan. Like, I think he's had a lot more of those moments this year. And when Jared Bednar talks about, because the clutch gene, the clutch factor has long been a debate on the DNVR Avalanche podcast. I think it's something that's real because you look at a guy like JT Compher, even at the NHL level, like, you have to want to be on the ice in that moment. You have to want to go to the front of the net, and you have to be okay with the abuse that you're about to take in front of the net, down one or up a goal, whatever it is. And JT Compher does not shy away from those moments. He does not shy away from getting to difficult areas. And he's got enough skill to make an impact. I completely agree. I've always thought the way that people talked about him being so tradable was so odd because he really is that, and it's such a cliche term, but like he is that Swiss Army knife for this Avalanche team. He can play anywhere in the lineup for a reasonable amount of time.
You're right. There's limitations.
There's limitations, but he actually kind of reminds me of a little bit of a grittier version of John Mitchell. Because I remember John Mitchell had a little bit of that quality too, where it's like, hey, we have an injury on our top line. They're going to miss 2 games. Mitchie, can you play center here? And he'd do it admirably for 2 games. JT Compher has that similar quality where we need, now, again, he has not just done spot duty in the top 6 to start this season. He has been a bona fide, no doubt, top 6 center for, 40 games or 39 games, whatever it is now that they're at. So let's give him a little bit of credit there. But yeah, typically that top 6 role, you have to keep it a little bit more limited for him, but he can turn in some really good minutes over 2 to 5 games consistently in that role before he maybe starts to get exposed a bit. But on the flip side, he has been a top-tier bottom 6 player for the Avs these last couple of years, has been a key bottom 6 depth piece for the Avs in these playoff runs. He kills penalties. He plays on the power play. He's out there in the last couple of minutes to defend a lead. He's out there in the last couple of minutes to try to get the team to come from behind. JT Compher, I think, is going to be one of the biggest storylines for us to follow as we enter into the back half of this season. Not only with how he's playing for the Avs on the ice, but what implications does this have for re-signing him? Can the Avs turn him into the Andre Palat West, where can you get him to take what is clearly below market value because you can sell him on, hey, get a couple more rings here. You're a huge part of us winning championships. Or is JT Compher staring down a $7 million payday somewhere else? I'm not necessarily saying that that's what he's worth, but if he continues to have a season like this, put on display a top 6 center season, penalty kill, power play, I don't doubt that you would see a team out there get a little twitchy and get him into that 6.5 plus. As where I think if you're the Avs, you're hoping that if you're the Avs trying to keep him, it's like 5 or less. And if he continues to have this type of season, not only do I think that's out the window, I think you're going to have some team potentially do something dumb for JT Compher.
It's interesting because I don't know what he would personally feel inclined to do. Mm-hmm. He has roots here and there is trust. He is a comfort to Bednar because of the trust that they've established as player and coach, that you don't know if that would have any influence on his decision to take a team-friendlier contract here or not.
Right.
It's going to be hard, too, with Evan Rodriguez emerging a little bit here. That might be a more affordable option that the Avs have a hard time not considering. The other part of it are the philosophical reasons of believing in clutch players. And you look at someone like Cale Makar or even a Mikko Rantanen, and they also do score pretty timely goals, but they also just score goals.
Right.
And I think that's why people have a little bit of issue with clutch. But even looking at Makar, who has offensively been stifled these last few games, he does find his scoring, and he does it in overtime.
Yeah.
And I think that's a little bit clutch. And I think the part of clutch that is real is players' ability to play under pressure.
Yes.
And to identify the moments
Megan,
that they need to step up. Because good players should be able to do that, right?
Yep.
But there are some players who really recognize those moments and can elevate their play beyond what their standard is.
Yep.
And I think that's what happens with JT Compher a lot of the times. Because like with a Cale Makar, the standard is already high.
Yep.
It's hard to pinpoint how that gets elevated in important moments. But for JT Compher, he can really play with a level head, and that's why I think the clutch factor is real.
Yep.
I think there's an argument to be made for someone like a Cale Makar too, even though he's so talented. But that's why I believe in it with respect to JT Compher, and it's just a relief that the Avs can finally win some faceoffs with JT Compher in the lineup.
Yeah, so that is AJ's the big detractor to there's no such thing as clutch, just good players are good players and they score. And I'm with you, Megan. There is, even when you get to the NHL level and you have a bunch of these guys who are used to being the best player on their team, whatever it is, that hierarchy kind of like reforms itself when you have a room full of the best player on their team, right? Well, now you have a new best player on the team. You have a new worst player on the team. And, there is just that hierarchy. And like you said, it's the playing under pressure. And it's not only I'm not afraid to go out there and make a mistake, but I'm going to go out there and I'm going to have my best shift of the game. And it's that confidence and it's that willingness to play under pressure. Not only to play under pressure, but to want to go out there and play under pressure. I think about Nathan MacKinnon's rookie year, round 1, game 5 against the Wild. The Avs won in overtime, and MacKinnon was the one that scored that goal. And they talked about in the broadcast that before he gets the puck, he's tapping his stick on the ice. It's overtime of the NHL playoffs. He's 18 years old, and he's like, hey, Paul Stastny, alternate captain, give me the puck. That is what a clutch player is to me. It's someone who isn't afraid to go out there and have the puck on their stick because they're not afraid to make a mistake. They are not afraid that they are going to get caught on the wrong side of things. They are confident that they're going to go out there, the puck's going to land on their stick, and they're going to be the hero. That is what makes a player clutch, whatever phrase you want to use. In my opinion, that's what it is. And I think JT Compher has that, despite him being a bottom 6 player. And that's why I think he's even got it even more so. He's a bottom 6 player. He plays on the third line in most healthy situations. And every year in the playoffs, he's like, put me in, coach. We're down 1. We need a goal. I want to go. I want to go in with Mikko Rantanen and Nathan MacKinnon. And he doesn't defer to those guys. He's not afraid to shoot. And then Jared Bedard talked to us about he's got a little bit of that Landy thing. He gets sticks on pucks. He's got a little bit of that. He can pick pucks out of the air. He can find pucks through traffic. Like, he really is. This isn't, I think, how Jared Bedard meant it. But like, JT Compher really does strike me a little bit as like a Gabe Landeskog, like ultra light. Like, you know what I mean? Like not just like,
you
not
were
just
so cautious to even say that. I thought it was going to be insulting. I guess it could be kind of insulting.
Right. But like, Gabe Landeskog light or ultra light, depending on how you feel about Compher. But like, he's just got some of those same tendencies, He's been huge for this Avs team. I think he's so much more valuable to this organization than people give him credit for. If he ends up doing what we all think he will and walks this summer, I think his absence will be felt much more than people realize.
Not every player meets the moment when they need to as well. You look at someone like Matt Duchene, who is offensively gifted, but his goal scoring didn't always come at opportune times, and it was garbage time goals, and he sort of became known for it. And I think that's why you see a team like Nashville that's loaded with offensive talent struggle a little bit in the playoffs because they have players who can score in the regular season, but they have trouble beating that moment. And you don't want to undervalue that when you have a third line player who is able to do that.
Yep. Yeah, 100%. And it's the ability to turn the page is what makes Nathan MacKinnon, obviously it ends up being like, goes from an all-time Avs great moment to an all-time Avs like kicking the pants moment.
Yeah.
But again, they had just given away a 3-0 lead, and Nathan MacKinnon said, cool, I'm going to go play my best hockey of the game. That is a clutch player right there. And again, this amazing clutch play ends up turning into this crash and burn moment for the Avs in that particular situation. But to your point, Meghan, there are really good, there are really talented players. A guy like Alex Semin comes to mind for me when you have this conversation of like, that was an extremely talented player who just shriveled up and disappeared anytime the lights got bright. He was an extremely talented goal scorer. When the moment called for it the most, he didn't have it. And that's kind of like in line with what you're saying, not to like continue to pick on a guy like Matt Duchene, but he has developed a little bit of a reputation for that garbage time goals. Yeah, wow, Matt Duchene, 2 goals in 15 seconds. They were down 7-1 at the time, but cool. There's a difference between just being a really good player and being a clutch player. You can see some overlap there at times, but I do think they are their own category.
I completely agree. And looking back at the return of Nathan MacKinnon to the lineup, despite the return game not being very good, you can't deny that having him back in the lineup points to maybe a power play that will finally score. And it's bigger than just Nathan MacKinnon. This is sort of breaking this into two topics we could talk about, but it's going to be getting players back into the lineup after they've missed some time due to injury. But before that too, it's the holiday break, generally speaking, is difficult. It's hard for players to get back into gameplay after the holiday break. Historically, the Avs just aren't great after the holiday. And so that's a part of it too that I'm factoring into this, but Avs will probably turn things around, especially with Nathan MacKinnon back in the lineup. You don't expect the power play to continue to fail the way that it has.
No.
But even still, looking at the holiday break, I don't think there has been one that has been hampered with injury as much as this one has specifically. So it exacerbates an already existing problem for the Avs after the break. These injuries have been unlike anything I can recall at least seen in the last decade for the Avalanche. And it has required a lot from the strength and conditioning team and the skills coach that helps get these guys, Val Nichushkin, Darren Helm, Nathan MacKinnon, back into gameplay. Evan Rodriguez, too, because he's one who has immediately impacted the lineup positively when he's returned. It takes, we'll talk about it, too, but I'll throw it to you to guide the Shawn Allard conversation because it has unfortunately become really relevant topic this year. Yeah,
right. Unfortunate is correct. So I remember a couple years ago when we first, I think it was 2 seasons back, I believe. Well, I think it was the San Jose. It was the bubble year.
Okay.
It was the bubble year before the COVID pause. And it was a similar thing where the Avs were dealing with a lot of injuries early on, not to as many key players, and that's the part where I completely agree with you in terms of I don't know if I've ever seen this type of injury run. I've been on a couple radio stations in Canada this last week, which is the Avs being in Vancouver, and then playing Toronto last week, in Vancouver, and Edmonton this week. I've been on a couple radio stations, and each one has asked me about the injuries, and all of them have called out, like, this isn't just raw man games lost. You're talking about, like, top 6, top 4 guys, like, almost exclusively going out. So that's the part that's been weird. But like you said, we'll circle back to that. Jared Bednar talked because the Avs were having a lot of these guys in the bubble year that were going out with injury, and they were coming back and, like, immediately having an impact on that next game they were playing with. A goal, 2 assist night, whatever it is, shutouts for goalies. It was just like, man, it seems like if you're going through a slump, just get hurt, come back, and, like, you'll be good. And we asked Jared Bednar about it, and he referred to the Avs skills coaches, Shawn Allard, as the team's secret weapon. And he was pretty vague about it at the time, saying, like, he is working with these guys and he's getting them back to game speed, game act, being game ready the day they drop back in. And so we all just kind of started putting a little bit of extra attention on Shawn Allard and what he does and how he helps these guys. And it's been fascinating to watch over the last couple of years. He's out there before practice with guys that are injured, and then he stays late with any guys that want to. Sometimes it's injured guys, sometimes it's healthy scratch guys. We've seen Alex Newhook a ton this year stay out after practice, after morning skates, just to get in work with Shawn Allard, despite that he's in the lineup. He just wants to get an extra work. And so I'll be honest, I was originally working on kind of this big story about this secret weapon that the Avs have within their organization that no other team, how has no other team picked up on this? Well, I had some conversations with some players this week, and I found out that the reason it feels like this big secret for the Avs is because they referred to him as their skills coach. I found out that every team, or almost every team, 95% of the teams, have this coach. They all call him something different. He's referred to as a rehabilitation coach, skating coach, power skating. Is it Tracy Tuttle? Was that her name? She used to be, I think that's her name. A power skating coach that worked with the Avs. I believe she's now with the Toronto Maple Leafs, does something similar to what Shawn Allard does. So this really cool, like, secret piece.
But nobody's doing it like he does.
Right, yeah. So I had to, like, I just decided it would fit better here. Because regardless of if every team has it, all jokes aside, I do think there is something that Shawn Allard does that is unique to the way that he deals with players. And just watching, he has them work on little things that you wouldn't normally think of in a drill. Like literally, he'll conduct this entire drill. By the way, everything he does with these injured players or players looking to work on it is built around going at 100%. This isn't walk your way through this drill to get the touches right. It is, I want you skating as hard as you can through this drill. And there's so many where it's like, I'm going to rim this puck around the boards bouncing. I want you to take it off the wall. That's the type of stuff that he works on. He'll literally, he'll have a guy kind of up, like facing up against the wall, and he'll shoot a puck into his feet. Find the puck in your feet and turn around and make a play up the wall. It's little things like that where it's not necessarily always shooting on net, making these hard, crisp passes. It's the timing stuff. It's like I said, it's finding pucks in traffic. It's digging a puck off the wall. It's taking a puck on your backhand, when it's coming kind of bouncing up, the kick plate. It's a hard puck to take, and when you're in a game speed, you need to be doing that at 100%. And that's the stuff that he works on them with. That's part of the reason why I think these injured guys can get back so quickly. Then on the other side, he works on that stuff and more, and my understanding is it's all tailored to what individual players need. And he works on that little stuff where it's like, hey, Alex Newhook, you're getting caught up in X, Y, and Z. You're making the right play for A, B, and C, but X, Y, and Z, you're getting stuck. We're going to work on X. We're not going to do this whole sequence. We're not going to work on your shot or whatever. But when you're, and again, I'm making all this up because I don't know what him and Alex Newhook talk about, every day. But when you're crossing over from here to here, instead of trying to carry the puck, why don't you push it to space and skate to it? Blah, 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 blah. That's the type of stuff he works on. And I think, for me, I look at a guy like Curtis McDermott and the impact that Shawn Allard has had on him. He was easily my most improved player from the start of the year to the end. Curtis McDermott didn't play at all in the playoffs, but he worked with Shawn Allard before every practice, worked with him after every practice, and I saw the biggest improvement from the beginning of the year to the end watching McDermott skate. His stride, the way he handled the puck. Again, he's still rough around the edges. But I really did think it was such a testament to, one, how hard Curtis McDermott worked, and two, the attention to detail that Shawn Allard has.
Yeah, I can't say enough good things about him. He's just an awesome guy and teaches me a lot, and he knows what I need, exactly what I need to get back in the lineup and do my thing. So he's just been such a big help to me over the past couple seasons. So I love working with him.
I think it's an excellent point about it not being exclusive to just rehabilitating players back from injury.
Yes.
We have talked at length about how it is not the NHL's job to develop prospects. The American League is the teaching league. But This is where Ben Meyers is able to improve.
Yeah.
He is someone that is also working with Shawn Allard on the details of his game, and Jared Bednar feels he has gotten better on that side of the puck. And you have to look at this as a safety net too. Like, they are not in the business of developing prospects, sure, but it doesn't mean that they aren't working on the details of individual players' games.
Right.
Someone like Ben Meyers, someone like Martin Kaut, especially in those optional practices, is digging deep and really fine-tuning the details of the game so that they are brought up to NHL speed. So, that's the important qualifier that comes with, all right, we're not developing prospects, but you have a skills coach like Shawn Allard who can work with players who still have some things that they need to improve on in their game.
And what's important to note about this, and then we can start to kind of wrap this conversation up, but I think the important thing to note about this is goes hand in hand with what you were just saying, Meghan. You are able to get that individualized kind of development work, but when does it come? Before practice, after practice, optional practices. This is not something that Jared Bednar and company need to be dedicating time during team practice when you need to be focusing on systems and power plays and penalty kills and breakouts and things like that. You don't have to be taking the time to individualize, Ben Meyers, work down low in the offensive zone. That's what you got Shawn Allard for. And you love to see the guys like Ben Meyers taking the time, to put in that effort. Again, Curtis McDermott, while he still has a long way to go, I think part of the reason the Avs rewarded him with an extension is because they said, we see the work, we see that you are willing to show up every day and work with Shawn Allard to improve your skills, to make yourself an impact player, to one extent or the other. And again, we're using Curtis McDermott as the example right now, but there are countless players. Nathan McKinnon works with him when he comes back. Every player on this roster works with Shawn Allard, and I think while other teams may have a version, I don't think you can look past a guy like Shawn Allard and say he contributed to what got this team to a Stanley Cup. Because when you get that far in the playoffs, it is the fine details that make the difference. And the Avs' fine details were better than anyone else's last year.
I think it's fair to say that the organization as a whole has brought in the personnel that they have very intentionally.
Yes.
And that is our final topic. It's going to be Greg Cronin. You didn't think I would finish this pod without at least mentioning that. The Colorado Eagles also were on a losing skid. Now, their holiday break, they also suffer from a little bit of the rust versus rest in the rust versus rest debate. And they went on a 5-game road trip immediately following the break. So it was just kind of a tough schedule for them,
and road trips are notoriously easy in the American League.
So easy. So they dropped the first 3 games. And it's difficult. Teams don't like losing. How does a team like that respond? I think there are important takeaways you can look in how the Colorado Eagles respond and how they're able to break their slump compared alongside how the Avs were also able to do it. There's a lot of parallels in the problems that the Eagles were having, the problems that the Colorado Avalanche were having. And then it's interesting to then hear from the head coach ahead of the game that they eventually do end up breaking that slump. It's the series in Arizona where they're playing the Roadrunners, and they end up winning both games. They win kind of a close game, I believe 2-1 in that Friday game. And then they drop a 6-1 game on Arizona the next day. And I'm excited to see how the Avs respond then in their second game after finally getting a close, narrow win. If a little bit of the floodgates have opened for them offensively, but we'll hear from Greg Cronin in a second. He addresses a little bit of the identity of the team and why sticking to their identity and their process is the way to break a slump. It's the key to doing it.
Oh, I'm so happy you said that. I'm so excited to talk about this.
And then the other is, weirdly, the topic of analytics and how he also uses that to sort of put games to bed. Like, this is how we hit reset, is we do go back and we look analytically where errors were made so that we can fix them moving forward, but then we put those games to rest, and that's sort of how they reset moving forward. The identity of the Colorado Eagles and what they've been instructed to do to break slumps is so similar to what Jared Bednar has talked about needing to do, because right now, Cronin cites the Eagles as being a little offensively depleted, and it's partly special teams have been struggling a bit, particularly the power play. You look at who gets called up from the Eagles at any given point, it is a power play player for the Eagles. Whether it be a defenseman or a forward, they are losing part of their power play. And so that has been difficult for them to score. A lot of the AHL too is happening on special teams. It's kind of 5-on-5 mixed in there some of the time. And then, just losing then offensive tools like a Brad Hunt. Whether you like it or not, at the AHL, he was among the points leaders for the Eagles.
What a goal for him the other night.
What a goal for him. Exactly.
After he hit the post earlier.
It's incredible to see him doing it because you see him doing it at the AHL level. And so that being said, Eagles have also had a finishing issue and just finding their offense anywhere in the game. And so Cronin said defense first. And because they do lead the league in zone possession time, it's not that they're offensively poor. They just need to take better chances, take smarter chances.
The in-house baked stats tell us that when we're on our game in terms of playing tight gaps, controlling the possession game, we usually have good results. And we did the same thing in Iowa. I thought the first game, we were a little bit sloppy, but that was a game that we actually made it an up-for-grabs type of game because we weren't as solid as we were away from the puck. The second night, we had better chances, we had more analytical chances, and we should have won the game. So during this run, you get caught up by the scores and stuff, and which is obviously the most important stat because you want to win. But we measure it. We measured our, like I said, our in-house stats with the analytical stats, and we can tell how we're playing. Sports has become almost scientific to an extent that you can actually see what's going on with heat maps, and we've controlled that. Whether we're winning 7 in a row, we've gone 3 and 4, and honestly, I think I shared this in the Bakersfield game we won. We actually shouldn't have won. We got out-chanced and we got out-analytic, but the night before we should have won and we lost. So it's weird. Like, it's just like we can only control what we do as a staff in terms of getting guys to play the way we want to play, which feeds our natural identity. And our natural identity right now is got to be defense first. We don't have the weapons to score, so we got to suppress chances against, and we've got to try and create chances off our effort. So it's a combination of us playing really well defensively and eliminating scoring chances, and then offensively when we get the puck is being smart with it, make good plays with it. Don't keep it so vanilla that we're just trying to stay alive. We want to make plays that are based on our core identity, which is we're number one in the league in offensive zone time. So how can we generate chances off of those possessions?
I love what he says about it's like they need to get creative. He says it in a funner way, though, but he says something about they also need to get a little creative. And I think that's an interesting diagnosis of what the Avs also need to do, because there's some part sticking to the process and also smart shot selection, but also not getting too in your head.
It's so... Let me pause real fast to go on this 2-second little diatribe about Brad Hunt. So I was on 1600 TSN 1600 in Edmonton, and they asked me about Brad Hunt. They asked me about Brad Hunt and Andrew Cogliano. They were like, Oilers fans always want to know what's going on with former Oilers, and I laughed to myself. I was like, Brad Hunt?
He's gotten around. I didn't know he was an Oiler.
I didn't either. And then he hit the post in that game, and I was like, oh, that's so funny. They asked me about Brad Hunt, and there he is hitting a post. And then he ties the game up later, and I was just laughing to myself because I was like, never coming into this season, I did not think I would be in any interview anywhere being asked about Brad Hunt. Not only did I get asked about him, but the next game in which he was playing that they were asking about, he ends up scoring the game-tying goal. I just thought it was so funny. Meghan, listening to you talk about Greg Cronin and the Eagles just then, if I had missed the first 10 seconds of the intro to that segment, I would have thought we were talking about Jared Bednar and the Avalanche in terms of philosophy and process and where they see that their commitments need to be the strongest first. It's part of what I think made this team early in the season. Obviously, the Avalanche hit a skid recently. Why they were able to not only stay afloat, but stay very competitive, stay in the top three of that division. It's because of the cohesion between the NHL team and the AHL team. I think Greg Cronin is an underrated coach here. I don't necessarily know just in Denver. I think this is a guy that will absolutely be getting looked at for NHL jobs over the next couple of years.
Don't say that.
Because he's got the right philosophy. He understands. We don't get rattled, and I think the reason you saw that big breakout the game after is similar to what happened to the Avs a couple weeks ago, month ago now, in St. Louis. The Avs have that comeback, the Mikko Rantanen hat trick, and Mikko told us after, we'd been doing really good things, and it was great to get rewarded for him. I think that's what you see similarly with the Eagles, what you're talking about. We didn't feel like we had been bad. We just hadn't had things going well for us. You have a good game, you play well, you come out the other side on a one-goal victory, and you get that boost of confidence like, oh, okay, we are still who we thought we are. We talked early in the show about the Avs knowing who they are, and I think you see that reflected organization-wide. The Eagles know who they are. They are confident in their systems. Greg Cronin believes that if we do the right things, we will come out the way we want to in the majority of situations. We talk a lot about what C-Mac and Joe Sakic have been able to do in terms of personnel on the ice. You said it perfectly a minute ago. I don't think we fully appreciate the caliber of talent they brought in on a coaching staff level, whether it be AHL, NHL, behind the bench, behind the scenes, the players, the staff that this organization has right now. They're very lucky, and it's part of the reason why I don't worry about a 5-game skid for the Avs. The organizational depth and commitment to success just runs too deep.
I think that's a great note to end this on, but I also want to mention that Jean-Luc Foudy just continues to score at the AHL level. He is somewhere around a point-per-game pace. I just had to throw that in there.
I think we talked about it on the show a couple weeks ago. I think he jumped way, way up in the prospect depth pool versus where he was at the start of the year. That's a kid that I look at now, and I'm saying, unfortunately, that may be another trade deadline casualty, but that's because I think there are 32 NHL teams saying that might be an NHLer, and that's a good problem for the Avs to have.
Absolutely. Respect Greg Cronin. Respect Jean-Luc Foudy. I'm Meghan Angley. Jesse Montano, thank you so much for tuning into DNVR's At the Rink podcast. We'll be back with you next Monday with even more exclusive content, access-driven content, now that we'll both be at the rink. We'll be on the road a little bit too, but we're really going to milk it for everything.